Oh my word, could you just not bark? Could you just not bark? I'm trying to film. I am. Did you know I'm trying to talk to my friends right there? Right there. Say hello to them. Say hello. Where are they? Yeah. Hello. Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Kyla, and we are going to talk about one of my favorite genres in the world today, and that is cozy fantasy. I could have sworn at one point on my channel I did a cozy fantasy recommendations video. I apparently do not know the videos that I put out anymore because I was wrong. I did a 10 fantasy for beginners video, which I will link below as well as in the cards, and a lot of those kind of overlap because I do feel like fantasy for beginners is also a little bit cozy because you want to like dabble in. So some of these do overlap, but I tried to pick books that I didn't mention in that video. Tried to pick ones that I haven't talked about like exorbitantly on my channel because I do have, you know, my list of like typical recommendations. I mean, some of these are kind of obvious, or have been mentioned like a million times in cozy fantasy recommendations, but I tried to pick ones that are a little bit outside the box, and like the obvious ones like House in the Cerulean Sea or Every Heart a Doorway. I'm name dropping them because I want you to also know that I recommend those as well. But these are ones that I haven't talked about like a ton on my channel. I think that if you are looking for cozy recommendations, these are it. Some of these do dabble in other genres as well, but they all do have a fantastical element to them. So I feel like it counts. My channel, my rules. I think that's it. Let's just go ahead and get into the list. So my first recommendation is actually kind of a niche recommendation. One of my freaking favorite things about cozy books, whether it's cozy mysteries or cozy fantasies like we're talking about today, is that they talk about food a lot of the time. And I love books that talk about food, whether it's baking, whether it's coffee, tea, we're cooking up in the kitchen. I do not care if you mention food or it centers around food. I'm sold. You will notice that theme in a lot of these books, and my first recommendation is no different. It is a little niche. It is a little niche. But I have to mention it because it is truly one of my favorites, and it is Sourdough by Robin Sloan. This has a little sourdough loaf on the cover, and if you know anything about me, you know that I freaking love sourdough. I'm a bread connoisseur. And I love me sourdough. It is just, it's the best. It's the elite bread, in my opinion. I just love this book so much. This follows our main character, Lois, and she is, I think, like an IT programmer or something along those lines. Kind of a mundane, day-to-day job. She's just feeling like she's a little bit down and out, a little bit stuck in life, not really passionate about her work the way that she was expecting to be. And one day, after a like super long day, she comes home, she orders her favorite takeout from her favorite place that she does over and over and over again, and she finds out that the takeout place is actually going out of business. They're leaving, going back from where they're from, and they leave her their sourdough starter. And the sourdough starter takes on a mind of its own, and it really takes her down a path of finding what truly brings her joy in life, realizing that like career and how much money you make isn't necessarily the end-all be-all. It's truly about how happy you are and if you love what you do. And this book really explores that, but it's centered around sourdough and her catering to the sourdough starter. Like I said, it's so niche, but I love it. I love the messaging around this book. If you are someone who is in their mid-30s, or maybe you're just like at post-college or whatever, you're just trying to like figure out your life and your career, this will definitely impact you. It will hit you in all of the right feels. Also, if you are a bread lover like me, this will have you salivating for a fresh loaf of sourdough, and I just love it. I love the characters in this book. I also really loved the audio version of this because we do get snippets of the owners of the takeout restaurant where they're like sending emails back and forth, and there's music, and it's just very well done in audio form, and I just highly recommend it. It's very cozy with a good message, talks about food. What more could you want? Keeping on that same theme, my next recommendation also happens to have sourdough in it, but not in the way that you might think. My next recommendation is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. This is a middle grade by T. Kingfisher, and oh my god, it's got T. Kingfisher's writing, but make it cozy and middle grade, and it's so cute and adorable. In this one, we are following Mona. She is 14 years old and of course a wizard, but her magic skills only work on bread. She works in her family's bakery, and one day she goes in and she finds a dead body. So we have like a good mystery going on, but it involves sourdough because her familiar is a sourdough starter. And let me tell you, it is sassy. Sassy! It can't speak. Obviously, it's a sourdough starter, but it has such a personality throughout this entire book, and I just absolutely adore it, as well as this little gingerbread man. She is basically able to make her bakes come to life, so she can make gingerbread men and make them do certain things, and it is just so fun. And the way this mystery unfolds and the way the sourdough starter comes into play and these gingerbread men is just over the top, but amazing. It is absolutely amazing and just so fun, but it's also cozy and warm and talks a lot about family, and we have a little bit of a found family in here, and it's also just like a coming of age, figuring out who you are kind of story, and I just absolutely love this book. I read it around the holidays, and I feel like that was the perfect time. Something about the gingerbread men just made me like read it in December, and I think it was the perfect time. Cozy up some hot chocolate, maybe a gingerbread man yourself, and have yourself a ball. Now I realize it is spring now. If you want to read it now, you absolutely can. There's nothing in here that like makes it definitively a holiday read, but to me it just feels perfect to read it that time of year. Next recommendation is probably the most obvious on this list, but like, can you let a cozy fantasy recommendations video go on without mentioning these books? I don't think you can, and it is Legends and Lattes, but also Bookshops and Bone Dust. And I just truly love them both so much that I cannot recommend one without the other. Now, Bookshops and Bone Dust is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, so if you want to read it that way, if you for some reason haven't read Legends and Lattes yet, which like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I think it's fine to read them in that order, but of course, Legends and Lattes came first, so we'll talk about that one. This is the epitome of cozy fantasy. It is the most low stakes on this list, I feel like, and it is the most low stakes fantasy that I have ever read in my entire life, but that's what makes it so cozy. You're not going through this like heart-pounding, crazy plot. This is truly just about the characters, the vibes, about coffee, about baking, and it's just truly magical. It is a magical experience that I think everyone should have. I feel very passionately about that. I love this book so much. It still sits in like my top favorites of all time because it's just so incredibly well done. You cannot help but fall in love with each and every single one of these characters, simultaneously getting addicted to coffee at the same time, because truly this is like a worship of coffee right here in this book, and I just, for someone who loves coffee, I felt it. I felt it in my bones. But if this was like too low stakes for you, then I definitely would check out Bookshops and Bone Dust, because this one had a little bit higher stakes. It was not high stakes. Don't get my words twisted here. It was not high stakes, but it did have a little bit of higher stakes. This one we are following Viv. Prior to Legends and Lattes, she is healing from an injury in this specific town, and she decides to help out at the bookstore. So we still have this found family vibe. We still have this cozy vibe with the atmosphere of where she's located. And here she was building a coffee shop. In here she's working at a bookstore. So if you are a book lover, it's just right up your alley. And again, we get introduced to this cast of characters, including this little bird dog named freaking Pot Roast. Could you ask for anything more? I don't think so. It also does have talks of food because one of the characters does own a bakery. So if you're looking for that element, it's not lost in here. It is a little bit higher stakes where we have a storyline going on where we have some characters who have infiltrated the town on a hunt for something, and Viv feels the need to like protect everyone, and we get introduced to another character. I'm not gonna say anything about it, but it is so fun and unexpected, and it's just a great time. So highly recommend both of them. I mean, I'm sure you've read this one by now, but if you haven't, you have to. You have to. It's the epitome of cozy fantasy. It's the epitome of curling up or going out to a coffee shop, getting yourself a warm drink and a pastry and having a good time. And that's all I could ever like hope and want out of a reading experience. So they had to be on this list. I couldn't let it go by without mentioning them. My next recommendation was actually just sitting behind me. So little hint there, it is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I know this was hit or miss for people, but I personally really enjoyed this one. It is the perfect example of dual timeline that just works so well, and I had a blast. Now, is it because I just love the idea of an apothecary and like going on and having it like all of these vials of different things and like poisons and potions and all of that? Like, yes, okay, I'm a sucker for it. So maybe that's why I loved this one so much. But I also just absolutely loved the atmosphere and also just the womanhood in this book. I just absolutely ate it up. So like I said, in this one we are following dual timelines. In our present day timeline, we are following Caroline. Caroline flies to London after finding out that her husband has been cheating on her. They need some time apart to figure things out. She is not in the right headspace. She's been going through it and is like, I just need to go off on my own, have this like little adventure, figure things out. What do I want? That kind of thing. She's walking along the river one day and she notices this group of people who are like fishing for certain things, not like fishing, but like digging for lost kind of trinkets and that kind of thing. I guess it's a thing that they do. I don't know if that's real or not, but whatever. She decides to join in and she finds an apothecary vial, and she is a historian, so instantly she's just curious about like the history of this vial. The apothecary, what was the vibes, where did it come from, and she just sets off on this adventure, almost to kind of distract herself from what's going on in the present, just full on goes into it. And then we have the past timeline of this apothecary, which is known for creating hidden poisons so that women can take revenge on the men that have wronged them. And we are following the woman that runs the apothecary, and obviously they don't overlap in timeline, but they kind of do in a way, and it is just so fun. It's a very much like exploration kind of fantasy where we have Caroline, she's trying to figure out her life, so we have that kind of messaging going on of what do I want, what am I doing, what's important to me, while also following this timeline of like badass women and like being independent and just going with your gut and what feels right to you. And I just absolutely loved it. I love the writing in here. I loved the mystery unfolding of this apothecary. It was a little like heart pounding of like, is this woman gonna get caught? Because if that's the case, like, she gone. She gone. And then finding out what happens at the apothecary and everything. I just absolutely loved it. I love the atmosphere of the past timeline, and also we're in London in the present day, and I just love those vibes. And I just had a great time. Is it borderline cozy fantasy or cozy mystery? I would say it's a combination of both, and I think that's a great place to be. I love the cross of those genres. I just think it works perfectly, and this cover just screams spring. So if you're looking for a good cozy fantasy to read this spring, this is the one. This is absolutely the one. And then we come to my list of recommendations that all have my favorite trope in them, and that is found family. There is just something about found family that is just, I love it so much. I love when a band of characters from all walks of life come together and they just support each other and are there, and there's just so much love. And also, I just love it that much more in cozy fantasy. Now, obviously, Legends and Lattes, like, that has found family in it as well, but I put that in the mood, like, more food category. These books are all just pure cozy fantasy and just a warm freaking hug. I do have one recommendation in here that's like a little bit darker, but still super cozy in my opinion. So, starting off, we have one of the books from last year that made me cry, absolutely made me cry, and that is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This isn't obviously fantasy in a way that some of the others are. This could be argued as like a contemporary, a lit fic, but the island that we are going to in this book is very much magical. So I'm considering it a cozy fantasy. Is it a little bit of a stretch? Maybe, but I think it is. In this one, we are following Lucy. Lucy has grown up with a really tough childhood. She's pretty much felt alone her entire life, and she sought solace inside these Clock Island books when she was younger, and she just escaped through them, you know, as you do as a kid. Kind of like how you can just escape to Narnia or Lemony Snickets or that kind of thing. Like, very much that kind of series, and it was truly her way of coping as a child. Now, in the present day, Lucy is a teacher, and she falls in love with a student who is in the foster care system, and they really form a bond through these Clock Island books. She shares her love of them with him, and he seeks solace in them, and they really bond over that. And one day, Lucy gets the opportunity, because the author of the Clock Island books puts on a contest and says, I'm going to invite a handful of people to come to my island, compete, solve some puzzles, and the winner gets the rights to my new book. And this is a life-changing opportunity for Lucy because she really wants to adopt this boy, but she can't afford it. And where they do have this bond, she takes the opportunity to go to the Clock Island, and while she's there, she competes amongst other people who have also sought solace through these Clock Island books and all have a reason for being there. And it's just a very emotional time. So while this is still really cozy, because we have the talk of books, we have this cast of characters who is coming together. While it is a competition, there truly is some bonds that are forming and a lot of healing that is done. And to me, it's just done in a very cozy way. There's also a little bit of a romance in here. Just the nostalgia of this book and kind of diving into the vibes of this Clock Island series, like a Narnia, like a Lemony Snickets, just feels so nostalgic, and I think that's why it feels so cozy to me. So yes, this is an emotional read for sure. It's the only book last year that actually made me cry at the end, but I do think the nostalgia of this, if you've read any sort of series like that as a child, I think you will find the nostalgic of this very cozy, and just the whimsical of it all feels very cozy as well, with the solving of the puzzles and the way this island operates. It's definitely very magical, and I'm considering it cozy fantasy. fantasy, and I really loved this. While I do feel like the ending was a little bit rushed, I feel like I could have used a little bit more at the end. I think this was really well done, and I loved the way that it did end. I think it was the perfect ending, and again, it made me cry, so that's just saying something right there. And then we have another book that actually feels so nostalgic to me, and that is the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade series that is very much like Alice in Wonderland, and it is truly just feels like a warm hug. It really does. The second I read this one, I was like, oh my god, I feel like I am back watching Alice in Wonderland, and like I watched the really creepy one as a child, not the Disney one, like the real life people one. That was like a little bit disturbing, but is ingrained in my brain forever. You know the one. You know the one if you've seen it. It is hella disturbing, but it was the one that I watched as a child, and it just feels so nostalgic. And this one we are following Morrigan, and Morrigan is set to die on her 11th birthday, and she somehow escapes that and is taken away to Nevermore. And Nevermore is this very whimsical place. It is truly like Wonderland. The cast of characters in here are so unique. There is very much a character like the Cheshire Cat, and everything is just like, I just picture like Effie from the Hunger Games like fitting in this world so well. Like that's the vibe. Everything is very fun colors, everything is whimsical and wacky, and it just is so odd to her when she first arrived, but she very quickly learns to love it and falls in love, and she enters into this competition with the other kids in Nevermore and kind of earn her spot to stay. So it's also very much got like the competition vibes to it that also feels a bit nostalgic. And we have her, and she's staying at a hotel, and oh my god, there's just something about a book that takes place in a hotel that just makes me feel like I'm living like the Eloise dream, you know? I just absolutely love it. And again, this is like such a whimsical read. And we have, again, this cast of characters, found family, if you will. Takes a little while to get there, but they come together, and it's truly just an experience. I highly recommend the audiobooks for this, actually, because each one of the characters has their own voice, and it is so whimsical, so whimsy. It really translates into the audiobooks, where we have characters that are, you know, really high pitched and their voices are over the top and da-da-da, and it's like very much Alice in Wonderland like that. You know, you picture like the bunny, and it's just such a fun time if you are looking for something like that. You know, if you're not looking for something that's like a little bit over the top and whimsical, maybe this isn't the one for you. But I truly love this series so much. I haven't finished it yet. I do know that there's a new one coming out, I think this year, but I'm not up to date yet, but I highly recommend it. It's such an easy read as it is a middle grade, but it brings all of those cozy vibes, and it has the fantasy with all of the band of characters and the magic system and everything going on, and I just absolutely love it. It is one that I will highly recommend to pretty much anyone, because I think that anyone can read this and have a great time. My next recommendation has a little bit of a sci-fi spin to it, but it is so cozy, and it is A Psalm for the Wild built by Becky Chambers. These are cozy fantasy novellas, but they have a little bit of sci-fi to them, because we do follow the main perspective of a robot. We have a monk and we have a robot, and they come together in the wackiest of ways and go out on this adventure of life, essentially, and it truly is an exploration of life, but it is done in such a hilarious and cozy way that like anyone can read this and have a good time and take something from it, because the deeper themes going on in this book are very much impactful to, I think, anyone, regardless if it's like your thing or not, I think you will absolutely have a takeaway from this book, while it also being freaking hilarious, because you have this robot who is trying to figure out why humans do things the way they do. So he asks a lot of questions, and we have a monk who is trying to figure out their identity. They're not really sure how they feel about themselves and their sexuality and that kind of thing. So we have a lot of exploration of LGBTQ plus themes as well. And the robot is asking questions about that and like, why do you need an identity? What does that mean? So we have a lot of those conversations going on, but we also just have conversations about, you know, things like butterflies and sex and cooking and that kind of thing. And it's just absolutely hilarious, but also just so meaningful and impactful at the same time. And this is just one of those books where, like, if you've ever felt a little bit lost, you're gonna feel this in your bones. Or if you ever just feel like you need to like step away from the chaos of life and just be for a minute, this book is going to hit you in all of the feels and be exactly what you need in that moment. But it's also fantastical, you know? So I highly recommend it. I loved the sequel too. There was a lot of talk about sex in that one, and it was so funny. Oh my god, so funny. I really hope there's more in this series, and they're short little novellas, so they're really digestible. Also recommend the audiobooks. They are just a grand time. This next one could go on the cozy mystery list as opposed to the cozy fantasy list, but I'm including it on the cozy fantasy list because it is magical as well, and I feel like magic is fantasy. So technically it's both. It is a cozy fantasy mystery, and it's In the Company of Witches by Orly Wallace. I read this and immediately fell in love. This one follows our main character, Bryn. She runs a B&B with her two aunts, and one day someone dies while staying at their B&B, and one of her aunts is accused of the murder. So she goes out and she tries to basically solve the mystery, but there's also a lot of talk about grief in this one and just life as well, and the magical elements of this are so cozy, and just the overall vibes of this. It does take place in New England, so I feel like fall is the perfect time to read this. It definitely has those autumn descriptions in there, which to me is just cozy because that's that time of year that I want to start sheltering in, cozying up with a blanket, and have a good read. So maybe it's just because of the time of year that makes this really cozy, but also it's just one of those books that brings you the warm fuzzies because we have that talk about family and the family bond. We have the deeper exploration of grief in here, while we also have the magical elements and the fun and lightheartedness of that going on. And the ending of this book is one of the most beautiful endings that I have read in a long time. It's something that I still think about to this day, and I just absolutely had a great time with this one. It just gives me the warm fuzzies literally every single time I think about it. It's one that I want to reread, and I also want to continue in the series. It is a series, but I don't think there's like a ton of them out yet. I think there's only 2 or 3 so far, so it's definitely something that you could dive into easily. It's not one of those mystery series that has like 20 books already. There's only been a few, so it's okay. But even if you just wanted to read this first one, I think it's so absolutely worth it and just gives me all of the feels. Okay, I have 2 left for you. This first one is a little bit darker, but has found family in such a fun and unique way, and that is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. Yes, there are 2 T. Kingfishers on this list, but like I can't not recommend this one. This is also, I would say, a bit of a novella. It's short. It's not a full-length novel. It's only 240 pages. So, I mean, what is that? It's like in between a novella and a novel. I don't know, but it's really short. It's really digestible. This gives like dark fairy tale vibes, but in the best way. And this one we are following Mara. Mara is one of 3 sisters, and they are very much on the path to you must go off, marry the prince, and have babies. Mara has somehow escaped that life, but one of her sisters was not so fortunate, and she has sat back and watched her sister be treated like absolute dirt, like the scum of the earth by her husband, this prince, and she's had enough. So she sets off on this adventure to complete 3 impossible tasks, and if she's successful, she will be able to rescue her sister. So it's very much like a fairy tale in that sense, and she goes off on this adventure, and the 3 impossible tasks are: she has to build a dog of bones, sew a cloak of nettles, and capture moonlight in a jar. So she goes off and she acquires this found family along the way while she is trying to complete these tasks, one of them being the bone dog, which is one of my favorite characters in this book. While obviously he's made of bones and can't speak, very much again, like the sourdough starter in A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, has a personality. T. Kingfisher does it so well. And this just goes off, and it is absolutely incredibly well written and well done. I mean, it's T. Kingfisher, need I say more? It is a little bit darker. This one kind of blurs the lines of like cozy. To me, it still gives that warm, fuzzy feeling because of the found family and because of what she's trying to do for her sister. While we do have those deeper themes of abuse and basically being made to be like a baby factory, I would definitely look up trigger warnings because it does give some details and not in a pleasant way. I just love the way that this wraps up and the way we acquire these characters along the way, and it just, just warms my heart. So yes, it is a little bit darker, but I highly recommend it. This is one of my favorite T. Kingfishers I have ever read. I need her to do more books like this because it's just something I think about all the time. It's one that I want to reread all of the time, and it just gives me the warm fuzzies. Say that what you will, because it is a little bit darker. I don't know what to say. I consider it cozy, and it just makes me feel all of the things. And then my last recommendation is one of my favorites of this year so far. I can definitely see this being on my favorites list at the end of the year, and it is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This has everything that I want in a cozy fantasy and more. This is some of the cutest found family I have ever read in my entire life. This book gives very much House in the Cerulean Sea vibes, but make it witches. I mean, do you need anything else? Okay, I'll give it to you, okay? In this one, we are following our main character, Mike Moon, which, like, coolest name on the freaking planet. She is a witch. She is brought up, taught that you should never be in the same vicinity as other witches because bad things can happen. So she's very much grown up alone and isolated, and one day she gets the opportunity to come and teach these 3 younger witches how to use their powers. And she shows up to Nowhere House, which is what it's called, meeting this cast of characters. We have the 2 men who run the property and the school, if you will. We have the librarian, Broody. You can imagine what happens there. And then we have the caretaker of the house and these 3 girls. And the way they form a family bond is just truly some of the cutest found family I have ever read. Again, it gives very much House in the Cerulean Sea vibes. Ian, who runs the school, is very much like Arthur Parnassus, and it is just the best. I freaking love him. Again, on audio, so good. So good. He definitely has that voice down, and I'm obsessed with it. And then him and his husband Ken, they are just like the cutest couple, and also like so nosy and in the business of everyone else. And of course, some, things happen where we have someone coming to the house to investigate things. There's some things that need to be hidden. There's a mystery kind of going on. There's a lot happening in this book to just not make it all fun and whimsical. It does get a little bit sad at times, and I just absolutely ate this up. It's one that I could not stop stop thinking about. Again, one that I can see myself rereading, and I just had a great time. The romance in here is also like a very prominent plot line, but I actually really enjoyed it. Normally, I'm not like, oh, you know, give me the romance or whatever. Although, is she in her romance era? Maybe this book kicked it off. She's have a fathoming. We're fathoming. But I really enjoyed the romance in here. I thought it was really cute. I was kicking my feet. We love a grumpy sunshine. We do. We love a grumpy sunshine. I can't help it. Anyways, this is everything that you could want in a cozy fantasy. The magic, the found family, the vibes, this house, all of the cast of characters, the mystery. It's whimsical, it's fun, it's sad, it's romance, it's everything. Everything that you want. This one, if you had to pick any from this list, oh no, I can't say that. I take it back. I can't say that. But I really loved this one, and I cannot wait to see what she comes out with. I know that there's another one, something about innkeeping, coming out later this year. You bet your bottom dollar I'm going to be picking it up immediately, because I need more. I need more of this kind of story. You need to read it. You absolutely need to read it. And that is it. That is my list of cozy fantasy recommendations for you. If you have any that I didn't mention, please leave it in the comments. It's fine if it like blurs the lines between cozy mystery and cozy fantasy, because I feel like a lot of them do, you know? But if you have any other recommendations, please leave it in the comments for anyone that is watching this. Also, if you haven't read some of these and I just inspired you to check them out, let me know which ones you're going to be picking up first. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe if you are not already. Turn on the bell so you never miss a video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!
With you and I, the future